Yeah, so ROI is the big one, return on investment that I feel like everybody's really aware of. It's top of everybody's mind. ROE or return on engagement, thinking about these internal events is almost equally as important. Did I leave the event feeling like I have a better connection with my team members? Do I leave the event feeling like I have more transparency or an open connection field to my management or my leadership? Like any sort of measurement process, you want to establish a set of KPIs. So, ideally, partnering with the sales and growth team to tie this back to the performance based ROI analytics. Do they leave feeling like, okay, my company values me so much that they really treated us? They really treated us. The brand and the values were so woven into every part of the event, every facet of it. And ultimately, that's most likely going to affect their performance in their role.
Hi, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And I have with me today Shannon Milhollin. And Shannon is the CEO of Power Your Event. And I met Shannon at Unleash 2025 in May, and we had a great conversation. And she was there supporting a client. And we have had a couple of conversations since then. And I am so honored to have you as a guest on our podcast, Shannon. And without further ado, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your background and kind of what got you into the HR and talent acquisition space.
Well, thank you, Denise. I'm so excited to be on. Yeah, just to give you a little bit of background on who I am, why I started Empower Your Event, and kind of how I got there. So, I graduated from the University of South Carolina in 2020 with a degree from the journalism school. So, I did some events for college just for fun. I really never considered event planning as part of my career plan. I just kind of thought, okay, the only way to be a professional event planner is to do weddings or birthday parties, things like that. I never considered that corporate events was something that I could even get involved with. But graduating from school and job hunting during the pandemic, as you can imagine, was extremely stressful. But I was very fortunate to get a job in sales enablement for a global workforce solutions company. I was in that role for a couple of years. I loved it. I built great relationships with the sales team and with leadership. Just kind of getting my feet wet into the corporate environment. This was a global staffing company. I really didn't know much, if anything, about the staffing industry or global workforce solutions, what that even meant. So, really spent that first kind of year and a half in that role, absorbing, understanding the needs of the sales team, and yeah, just really getting to know the organization and the people. So, a year and a half ish down the line, I was promoted to the experiential marketing director role. I learned so much about myself in this role and just kind of continued narrowing down what I wanted my next 10, 15 years to look like. It was really the time of my life. I was 24 years old, traveling the world in some cases, planning incentive programs for 1,000 people, really getting to be creative. Again, really fostering and building those relationships with the sales organization, but also even further than that, the producers, obviously the marketing team, and then really the high level, the C-suite of the company. So I really dedicated that time to building my network of vendors, working with some really impressive people in the event space that I'm still great friends with today. But I really dedicated that time to being a sponge, learning so much, building relationships, and showcasing this talent I had to some of the highest leaders of that company, which was cool. So, looking at 2023, I decided I was passionate enough about driving revenue and planning meaningful experiences and understood the corporate event space well enough and the industry of staffing and workforce solutions well enough to go on my own and start Empower Your Event. But I realized I probably needed some experience in business. I remember I hadn't gone to business school for undergrad or anything. So I applied and was accepted to a graduate program at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, which helped me really fill some gaps and kind of continue building that core network.
Well, good for you. One of the things we talked about, and I wanted to kind of launch into it, is the ROI of experience. So let's start there because I think that empower your event and the fact that you started this company, you saw a need, and this events are just they're busting at the seams right now. Different events coming up. One thing I had heard, oh, I don't know, a long time ago was that COVID had really helped relaunch events. So let's talk about the ROI of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was starting Empower Your Event, I asked myself, how can we change the narrative of corporate events and make them something people are counting down the days to attend and talk about for months after, but are also driving revenue for the organization? We elevate corporate events and amplify the brand of our clients by fusing business transformation with celebration, all with that ROI of experience in at the forefront. So when you think about an experience or an event that you have been to or that you've loved, you leave feeling a certain way. If it was a negative experience, you're going to leave feeling that way. You're not going to want to talk about it to your friends. You're not going to want to go back. But if it's a positive experience, that's how you're going to leave feeling about that brand, about the people that you talk to, all of that. So when I think about ROI of experience from an events perspective, I'm thinking about it in 2 different kind of event formats. So I'm thinking of it in internal events and external events. External events would be anything client facing. So if my clients are bringing in a number of their prospects, clients, et cetera, partners, that would be considered an external event. And that's what a lot of people look at as events that drive tangible ROI. But for this case, I really want to focus on talking about the internal side of it because I think that's what really resonates with a lot of HR and talent acquisition leaders. The ROI of experience is, how do you elevate and amplify the culture of your company? How do you tie the values of the business to then the business objectives and instill that in your employees so that they feel motivated and empowered to go drive revenue for the organization? So that's how I kind of think about ROI of experience. But yeah, today I think we'll probably focus a little bit more about talking about the internal side of things and the culture side of things.
Okay, perfect. And you had also mentioned too design and designing with purpose. So what has led you to focus so intently on the experience side of HR? And also, what is your objective or mission on events design?
Yeah, definitely. So every event has a design, whether you consider it or not. Every event is going to have restrooms located in a certain place. It's going to have tables, chairs located in certain positions. So you can focus on like that actual production design. But I like to focus a little bit more on the program design and again, how people are going to leave feeling about the experience. So let's talk about connection. Connection at an organization is really what's going to foster retention. And how do you build connection with people? Like you can elevate your tech stack, you can optimize your connection tools and technology and everything so that if you and I were working on the same team, we might have a really easy w- style to Teams message each other. It might be really easy to jump on a call, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you and I are going to be best friends, that we're going to have an emotional, actual connection with each other past a face-to-face Zoom conversation. So the best way to build these connections with employees is to bring them all together, either on a virtual event or a physical in-person event, and give them some sort of shared connection, meaningful conversation, put some intent behind it so that they leave with at least one new friend. I was at the Future of Work event last week in New York and listening to this panel of HR and experience leaders. And this one woman who was just fantastic mentioned in her experience, an employee is much more likely to stay at a company if they have at least one best friend or a work buddy or a work friend. So interesting, but it's so true. Any sort of organization that we've ever been a part of, it's much more of like a positive nostalgic experience to have at least one person that you know and feel some sort of connection or like you can resonate with that individual. These internal events, they're not just time blocks on a calendar, they're an opportunity for a physical, mental, and emotional reset that can and should, if done with the right intent and design, like we mentioned, lead to an increase in positive culture and then ultimately lead to tangible ROI. So many events and organizations kind of miss the mark on this. I feel like they're so logistical focused, which obviously you need the hotel blocks, you need the catering, etc. But if your events are just logistical, there's a chance that they're probably not going to be transformational. And that's what we're really focusing on with experience and how that relates to culture shift and ultimate business objectives and values.
What are some of the internal events then that human resources and talent acquisition teams can put together then to kind of create these connections, if you would, between employees?
Yeah, definitely. Well, they're the major ones like incentive programs. So, like a president's club, a winner circle, things like that. Sales kickoffs, mid year check ins. I've worked with a lot of my clients to do these mid year, almost like a mini sales kickoff where you just realign, you reset, and again, have team building engagements, have not just typical happy hours, but doing like a twist on a traditional happy hour. Just this week, I just got back from an event actually where it was an educational session all day where the client had their team and a few clients and prospects in one room all together. And then we finished the day with a mixology and food pairing experience. So it was just a little bit of a twist on a happy hour. I feel like gone are the days of just the pizza parties, the all hands town halls. These are still important factors, but kind of reshifting how we think about them, even doing it very slightly and adding some brand infusion, cookies with the brand on it. Just little things that really don't impact budget or time at all that are really going to leave the attendees feeling like there was just another layer of purpose built into it.
What is the let's talk about the ROI factor then on this. How is the HR team going to measure the ROI from internal events or ROE you mentioned as well?
Yeah, so ROI is the big one, return on investment that I feel like everybody's really aware of. It's top of everybody's mind. ROE or return on engagement, thinking about these internal events is almost equally as important. Return on engagement, meaning like did I leave the event feeling like I have a better connection with my team members? Do I leave the event feeling like I have more transparency or an open connection field to my management or my leadership? So there are some ways to measure this from an HR perspective. Like any sort of measurement process, you want to establish a set of KPIs. So, ideally, partnering with the sales and growth team to tie this back to the performance based ROI analytics. So, yeah, in an ideal world, the CHRO and the CRO and their direct reports are working together on these events. Yeah, to really align on ultimate goals. Asking yourself, did the producers leave the event feeling motivated and encouraged to excel in their role? This would typically tie into seeing an increase in meetings booked, opportunity and revenue growth, etc., in the days and weeks and even months, depending on some company sales pipeline longevity immediately following the event. But in my perspective, that's why it's important to kind of work as a cohesive unit with the individuals that are going to be tracking that. It's a little bit different than just tracking it in a CRM like you would for a sales opportunity, but looking at things like pre and post survey engagement. So many people, if many, if not all, HR and talent teams are already doing this, but how can you make the user experience better for the employee so that it doesn't look like a chore? When you're filling out the post event survey, does it feel like you're filling out a medical form? It's like, okay, you rate from 1 to 10, how comfortable I feel talking to my manager or how trusted do I feel in the organization, which are all great questions. But doing little things like rewording the questions to focus on how the individual really felt and how the behavior will change after this event, maybe with not being so explicit in asking that. But yeah, making it feel like this is a fun, exciting opportunity for you to provide feedback. Retention data, of course, that's more of a longer term measurement process. But then one that I feel like is so important and often underlooked is really just management feedback from a performance perspective. If you do something really huge like an incentive program and you talk to the managers about their employees who are attending who won the incentive trip, You talk to them about their performance before they went on the trip and then after. Looking at behavior and performance pre and post event can really provide a lot of insight and just real authenticity about what the individual left feeling like. Do they leave feeling like, okay, my company values me so much that they really treated us. They really treated us. The brand and the values were so woven into every part of the event, every facet of it. And ultimately that's most likely going to affect their performance in their role.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you're telling me about this because it brings up some memories from the past about organizational development where companies would hire an external company to come in and put together events. Sometimes they were off-site, sometimes they were internal, but a lot of times they were off-site to try to help do team building exercises. I mean, do you kind of see some similarities and parallels there?
Absolutely. So I'll use a mid-year event that I did last year as an example of this. So events at the office, if you have a wonderful office, that's amazing. But most likely, if you have a lot of times global company or even just based in the US and you have remote employees or employees kind of based around the globe or the country, you're not going to be able to just get them all together really easily at your office. So I have a lot of clients, and I see this just being such a hot trend right now for companies just to bring their employees offsite for a mid-year check-in. So last year I did one, and the company was based in New York City, but they didn't wanna bring everybody into New York City. It was a time of year where the weather was iffy, New York can just be so crowded and everything, and they really wanted to give their employees an experience of rest and relaxation. They had been through a really just tough Q1 and Q2, and they really wanted to just remind the employees how much they value them and give them a sense of rest and relaxation. So we went to a little island off Rhode Island, or a little sector of Rhode Island, I guess, and found this really beautiful property right next to the water, and it really felt like an oasis or like you were going to a spa week, not a corporate mid-year check-in. And thinking about the longevity of the week, like you're not keeping people away from their families too long, it's an appropriate amount of time, and also making the content really fun. So instead of just having a series of sessions throughout the day or throughout the week, we gamified it and did a kind of an America's Got Talent version of sales pitches and demos. They wanted to give the sales team an opportunity to really showcase their demo skills. There's pre-work involved, all of that. Anyways, so we get on site and there's a golden buzzer and there are judges, and the entire day is just it's a positive experience for everybody. Even the people that are so nervous and uncomfortable getting on stage, you create an environment where they're celebrated, their mistakes are celebrated. It's a constructive environment rather than the spotlight's on you, good luck, and the best type of situation. And the feedback from those types of events is so strong in every way. It's just you think about the little things. You have to think about where you're sending people to the offsite, where you're bringing them. Is that going to leave them feeling like however you want them to leave feeling? And all of it should align with your ultimate goals of the event.
And like you were saying too, at the end of the event, providing, of course, the company sends out a short, brief survey, post-event survey. They're going to get probably a lot better response from people, I think, on the survey, but also to include information, like you said, so they can understand what the turnout was for or what the experience was for the employees, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And making those questions open ended sometimes. Like people love to share their feedback and not just an additional comment section at the very end of it. Like, how did you feel about this team building event? How did you feel about the food at the event? Instead
Right.
of rating it 1 to 5, which sometimes is better. But for this specific event, we did all open-ended, and people really felt like their feedback and their opinion was truly valued, not necessarily confined to a numeric value.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And food is always a big one to talk about after an event. It was good food or bad food, or were there enough places to sit? That's one of the things too at events that I've noticed. It's like you're walking around with this plate of food going, where am I going to sit to eat this? Because who wants to eat standing up? So I know that that's been a couple of my remarks at some of the events I've gone to. So let's talk about experience first recruiting events. What does a modern experience first recruiting event look like in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's familiar with the job fair, and you and I were chatting about this and just kind of laughing at how tired some of these job fairs are feeling. Just because we've done something the same way for so long doesn't mean it doesn't deserve a refresh. Like, you change your hair color every now and then, you need a refresh. So let's kind of rebrand how we look at the job fair. So even starting with things like the venue, is there an opportunity to host the event somewhere other than just a hotel ballroom? Consider natural light versus that fluorescent lighting, accessibility, proximity to an airport. Think about the attendees of the event, and if you were going to something, if you were going to this job fair, are you gonna walk in feeling energized, or are you gonna walk in feeling already tired because of that kind of stuffiness and fluorescent lighting that hotel ballrooms tend to have? There's nothing wrong with the hotel ballroom if it's what's absolutely necessary, but I'm just saying, like, let's kind of rethink even where they're being hosted.
I'm glad you brought that up because we had a post-event conversation for one of the events we went to earlier this year, and we talked about lighting and how this particular event had great lighting, where another event might be using too much fluorescent lighting. We went to an event last year that's an annual event. I'll go ahead and call them out because I think it's a great event. Is Wreckfest. It's outdoors in Tennessee, and they did it at a great time of year. You talked about that as well. The weather when you're going to plan an event, especially if it's well, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's inside or out. What time of year are you planning it? What's the weather gonna be like? For example, you mentioned an event in Boston in winter probably isn't a smart idea. But, like, they had it in September, and it was the weather was beautiful, it was outdoors, everybody was casual. I to me, it was one of the best events I've ever been to because
And you
because
remember
of the
those things.
environment.
Exactly, you remember those things. Like, I've been to so many events where and I'm an event planner, so I'm gonna nitpick things, probably more than the average attendee would. If I'm walking into an event and the weather is nice, they've communicated the attire you should wear appropriately, and know before you go communications are so important at events like this or just really any event in general. But yeah, you remember those things. It's so important. Yeah.
Talk about job fairs. We had I mean, boring job fairs where, like you said, they're like in a ballroom or they're
Yes.
in a big sectioned off area, bad lighting, it's too cold. People are dressing up, they're standing in line. It's a cattle call kind of environment. I mean, that's gotta go away.
It
What are your
has
suggestions
to.
there?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm glad you asked. I actually wanted to leave the audience with ways to rebrand your job fair. Let's swap out the traditional booths for branded experience zones or just some sort of experience. Gen Z and millennial candidates don't want to walk into a room filled with booths. Let's think about lounge setups, demo pods, day in the life walkthroughs. They want to experience your company culture and not just hear about it or read about it on a one pager. So that's the first thing that I would really start with is just think about the environment that you're in. And we talked about that a lot, but just kind of rethinking the traditional booth. Let's ditch the pens and the stress balls. Let's add substance to our presence. Branded merch is so amazing, and there are so many awesome vendors and companies that you can work with to really revamp your promotional strategy from a merch perspective. But in addition to this, let's look at live mini workshops, Q&A corners. I just did an event last week where we had a gelato stand and a barista with branded coffee cups. And these sorts of little experiences, micro experiences at your station or at your booth are gonna generate so much more traffic. It was a hot day in New York last week at this event, and our gelato stand generated the most traffic of any vendor at the entire conference just because people were like, "Thank God you guys have something besides a pen or a stress ball." It doesn't take crazy budget amounts or increases in budget to really make the experience something fun and meaningful. So that said, I would say feature your people, not just your recruiters. I feel like we focus so much on sending the TA teams, the HR teams, the recruiters, which is obviously so important, but let's consider sending just another member of the team potentially. If you have a ton of jobs open for procurement roles, bring somebody from the procurement team, because job seekers want to crave authenticity and want to picture themselves on your team. Unless you're you're hiring for a recruitment role, the people that they're going to meet at the job fair aren't necessarily going to be the people that they're working with or can picture themselves with. So I like to look at peer panels, employee stories, or even an ask me anything couch with actual team members. And again, these aren't things that are going to increase your budget or require you to put a ton more time into your events. It's just a more creative layer.
I love it. Now, let's talk about I have a question for you. So, in the past, we've worked a lot with outplacement companies for job fairs, where they've incorporated job fairs into the services that they offer their clients. The clients who are having reductions in force, for example. They'll set up a job fair and they'll invite other like-minded employers or similar employers to the event. Now, is that still happening, or is the event business kind of moving into a different type of format?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the industry. Obviously, the economy isn't going to look the same for every industry and for every organization. So, I think that the organizations who are struggling and having to have these reductions in force, I do see that still happening, and partner programs are so prevalent right now in the companies that I work with, and I feel like just the industry in general. And so not just offering your one set of products and services, but being able to say, "Okay, we can't do this, but we have an amazing partner that does this exact thing that you're looking for, and we're actually hosting an event together next week in your city. You're invited, like, come hear about the whole product suite," basically. So I feel like these partner events are honestly booming now more than ever because organizations are kind of required to look at their product suite and what their clients want in that way. So many companies just want to consolidate vendors. And so having these sort of partner events where you can showcase in real time, again, not just a virtual demo or inviting an individual from the partner onto a client call, but actually showing them in real time and hosting fireside chats or panels, those sorts of things, I feel like is really, really popular right now.
I hadn't heard of these. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing about partner events. Can
Really?
you Are you at liberty to share a couple? I mean, and how
Yeah, well, I mean, the one that we met at Unleash. So I was representing a client of mine called Atlas, and they were co-sponsoring their booth with one of their partners called Plane.
Oh,
And so yeah, and they really just have such a mutually beneficial relationship with each other. But then we created one pagers, we created marketing content to showcase at that event that highlights how each organization works together to provide the clients just a more optimized and elevated experience.
that's amazing. I love that because then you are kind of expanding your mission as a company,
Yes.
right? When you're including a partner type of arrangement. I love that. You also mentioned a day in the life walkthrough. Is that what you called it? What is that?
Yeah, so I did this at the company that I worked with last year, but it was so much fun. So a day in the life walkthrough is basically you can do it virtually if you don't have like an individual there for to represent the team that you're trying to hire for. But basically, it's just to showcase the candidate like day to day, what will my day look like? It's meeting with clients. It's okay, at 12 o'clock, we have team calls, all hands calls. 1 o'clock, oh, I have to go to a client meeting. It's walking through this kind of day in the life. And it's you probably want to create a day in the life experience that's maybe a little bit more fun of a day that you would typically have than just a
Sure.
or
Give
today
a
I'm on
good
email
day.
today I'm on emails and slammed back to back on calls for 8 hours, you know? But yeah, and then the candidate kind of gets a window into, okay, what will the job actually look like outside of the job description?
So you're at an event and someone's going to give you a day in the life walkthrough. How's that set up? I mean, is it with, like you said, especially if the hiring team, someone from the hiring team isn't there to present that, is it on a video or how?
Yeah. So I've seen it be done in a couple different formats. The most simple way that this really takes very, very minimal time and effort is to just put together a PowerPoint deck of a day in the life of this role, and it's visual heavy. It's not text heavy, it's visual heavy. Usually starts with kind of like a wheel or a timeline of day in the life at an overview, and you kind of get into each each sector of what that day looks like. But yeah, it can be as simple as a PowerPoint slide. It can be as kind of I've seen people do it even on virtual reality. They'll do a video and they'll film the video with virtual reality software, especially if it's in like an in-person type role. It'll be a video or an experience of the actual team member or a peer walking through the office, saying hi to the CEO or saying hello to their team, walking down to the cafeteria, having lunch with their team members or whatever, but you can do it in all the way in that sort of format or capacity as well.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I saw one, I mean, now that you're saying this, I saw it was a big screen where I think that they might have been doing that, but it was almost like they had like a projector kind of thing and then a screen where they could show somebody. I don't know if they were using any kind of AR or not. I don't think so. I think they had just kind of recorded something. I mean, it was kind of cool though, but yeah, I like the idea. Do it on a good day.
Exactly, like, kind of a more fun day. We all have the days where, yeah, it's like 9 to 5 back-to-back meetings all day. But there are even I've seen companies do, like, touchscreen interactive versions of this too, where you have a touchscreen environment at an event, and you can act as a number of different personas. I am a recruiter and I can touch the recruiter candidate, create a character, say, this is Denise. She's a recruiter for Top Source Talent, and this is what a day in her life looks like. And you can walk through that, but it's more of an interactive environment rather than just kind of that simple PowerPoint idea that I started off with.
That is great. So you had some other takeaways. Yeah, I mean, if I'm an HR person, and I'm watching this or a TA leader, I'm thinking, gosh, I would love to have an internal event for my team, especially knowing that it could increase employee retention. I mean, because we've kind of had like some people leaving and it's becoming an issue. What kind of event? I mean, what would be that piece of advice that you would give me to create some sort of not a high budget, but an event that's going to kind of help motivate employees and kind of move the needle forward, if you would, with respect to employee retention.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would look at this in 3 different ways. So first I would look at just reminding yourself that culture isn't built by accident. It's truly shaped by experiences. You can have the best values of any company in the world. You can have the most specific values, meaningful, insightful, but if this isn't translated to how the employees are actually feeling, then it's really not going to mean much in the end. So it's shaped by experiences. So I mentioned a few different ways on this during this conversation. Look at the time of year, look at where your attendees are, where your employees are based. And if they're all based on the East Coast, might not be the best use of their time to fly all the way to San Francisco for an event. It might be, but probably not, especially if you want to consider the event longevity and not taking them away from their families for too long. So it's thinking about those kind of foundational things. Also, yeah, TA and HR should care as much about ROI and ROE goals as the CRO, as the chief growth officer does. Like if your employees are happy, they're more likely to hit their revenue goals. If they feel like they're connected to the organization or again, have a friend in the company, they're going to be more likely to get excited to jump on their laptops if they're remote or pop into the office on a Tuesday morning pretty early. So just partnering with the revenue officers or the sales leaders to create this event and align the goals because there's so much overlap there. And then ultimately just asking yourself, does this event reflect the culture that we want to build? Do the attendees walk into the event and feel relaxed? Do they feel motivated? Do they feel empowered and valued? Or do they feel like they're just stuck in a room with the cheapest option possible for meals and not much thought and intent put behind it? Probably not. And yeah, and you don't need a huge budget to do these things. It's really just down to clarity, intention, creativity, and just a pulse on your people in general.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that pizza parties are still good, but I mean, like you were talking about the mixology thing, and I mean, you can do things a little differently. But I really love the idea of making, especially internal events, comfortable. Well, I've even noticed at some of the big conferences, the conferences where or the areas of the conference where people can sit and they you might have a big area, I guess, maybe for one of the bigger vendors or exhibitors, but they'll have couches and areas where people can sit and chit chat. There is a difference when people are comfortable. Huge.
Yes. 100%. And I was talking to a few people, just a few friends in the industry, and they were at an event. They didn't put on the event, but they just were attendees a month or two ago. So it wasn't even like the most top of mind event that they'd been to one since then. And they were like, I just remember being so freezing cold. I couldn't see the projector. Like I couldn't find the bathrooms ever. And those things are so important. They might seem so trivial to some, but these are key factors in creating the ultimate experience that's gonna help shape your employee culture and retention.
Seriously. I remember being at a couple events too where they would have the workshops or the little sectioned off areas for workshops or what would you call them, meeting rooms where they would run out of chairs. People were sitting on the floor. And yeah, granted they were learning something from it, but at an event, if you anticipate you're going to have a large audience, that's got to be taken into consideration too. Use the main stage room if you need to.
Yeah, exactly, and yeah, if you are especially if you're selling something or you're trying to get across a common goal, you want to create the ideal environment so that there are no outside variables that can distract them from hearing your message, and that's what I like to communicate and instill in all the events that we do.
Oh, totally. I remember as well, you were talking about bringing the people from the hiring teams. And I really do believe that that's super important. A couple of companies that I've supported in the past used to bring the manager from the hiring teams, and we were prepared to give verbal offers to candidates because the hiring managers were there to do the interviews. So we would actually make sure that there was a space, a private space where they could do interviews. And oftentimes, before we even left the conference, people were getting verbal offers and we'd follow up with the letter.
That's one of my ways to rebrand a job fair too is follow up like a marketer, not a recruiter. Sending personalized follow-up emails with event highlights, actual call to actions, especially if you're doing those actual live interviews with hiring experiences on site, that's amazing. Just give them something tangible that they can take away and look at it like a marketer rather than just a recruiter because yeah, it's going to be received with a more active tone than just simply a passive one.
Well, and I think too, people need to because the conferences and events are such a big deal now, and I don't see that ending. It's really quite amazing how popular and how forward thinking this whole entire event idea is now with getting people out of the office, getting them to connect with other peers who might be in other regions or other areas of the country, vendors and customers. They can all meet, like one person said, it's kind of like the new water cooler, right? So
Yes.
this is something that's important now. So it's important that we look at what we're going to do to increase events, like you said, internal as well as external, because the market, it's a little flat right now, but it changes. It always changes. And once things heat up, it's a good time to be looking at how are we positioning ourselves for events and kind of taking that new road, that new path forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that reminded me of one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I'll try to read this correctly, but that's the brilliance of event design. It converts temporary space into emotional architecture. It manifests pop up communities that vanish by midnight, yet leave behind a shared consciousness of something meaningful. So that's why I would like to think of events a vehicle to create meaningful connection and culture, and ultimately a shared experience.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Shannon, I kudos to you for starting this business. I mean, seriously, I love the idea, the innovation here behind what you're doing. I mean, you've got a lifelong career if you want it. So I'm so glad we're connected. I'm so glad we met. If somebody wants to get in touch with you and they want to reach out, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, definitely. So you can follow Empower Your Event on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and stay up to date with everything that you're doing or everything that we're doing. You can also connect with me personally on LinkedIn and send me a message. I like to think I'm pretty up to date on all my LinkedIn messages, but please always feel free to reach out if you need some advice, event consultation, or everything in between. I'm always available.
Shannon, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on as a guest and explaining this. I mean, amazing topic.
Thank you so much for having me,
Of
Denise. And yeah,
course.
it's always evolving. And so it's a fun topic to kind of just stay up to date and check in on.
Definitely. Well, it's nice to know you. Thank you.
Nice to know you.